The fastest way to ruin your life is to follow someone else's plan. But here's the problem. The mind craves order. Without thinking about it, we seek security, safety, and comfort. When I was young, dumb, and learning to survive in the world, my fate was in the hands of my parents and my teachers. I was too young to trust my own thinking, so by nature, I followed what they said. The path that I was set on was the only one that I knew, and that's where things start to go wrong. We all know the path of least risk is the greatest risk of all. We all know that a life of comfort is the most uncomfortable thing in the world. So we get stuck in this loop. Seek comfort, become uncomfortable, seek more comfort, become more uncomfortable, and eventually you end up so deep in a hole that it's incredibly hard to dig yourself out. If it's so comfortable, why do you have to numb the pain with quick pleasure? But here's the thing. Getting out is not as simple as setting a new goal or a New Year's resolution. Because most of the time with New Year's resolutions, it's just that time of year, right? It's conformity. You're doing it because everyone else is or because everyone is telling you to. And because you're pursuing the new goal for that reason and not an intrinsic reason, you don't have an iceberg of whys that create this intrinsic motivation to achieve the goal, so it's easy to quit and stop doing it. And we've all done this before. The fancy new goal is motivating for a few hours and then you eventually forget about it or just get trapped in the same cloud of distractions that you were trying to get out of. So if you want to avoid living a robotic and predetermined life, the solution is to equip your mind with the right tools to think for yourself. That is the fastest way to change your life. Here's how you start. The journey may and probably will be painful. What you aim at determines what you see. That is a quote from Jordan Peterson, and it aligns quite well with everything I've talked about over the past year. Mainly how goals shape your perception, which is what we'll get into. But first, we need to talk about this. You need a plan. There isn't any other way, because if you don't have one, society does, and they've been planning your life for decades. A plan is not a list of things that won't happen. It is an evolving blueprint that structures your mind to notice ideas that lead to progress. The problem is that people conform to the goals of their parents or society and stop there. Now, you don't really have a choice when you're a child, like when I was a kid, trusting my parents and teachers. But after that, once you're out on your own, you don't have to pursue those goals in order to survive anymore. We're going to talk about this in the next video, but you kind of have to adopt a lot of what your parents' beliefs are so that you don't get cast out of the tribe, so to say, right? It's a survival instinct. You have to adopt their values. You have to become a Christian, a Muslim, a Republican, a Democrat, a whatever it is. And yeah, you can rebel, you can reject it. And some parents may be okay with that. But in a lot of cases, you know that it's not wise to lose your parents' trust because your survival is in their hands. I'm not saying that this happens to everyone. I'm just saying that it is a massive influence on how you are raised, is the need for approval. And just in the general productivity or self-help world, you know that having a goal is a good thing. You've heard all the arguments about systems are greater than goals and you need clear, specific goals or SMART goals. But the thing here is that most people don't understand what a goal is. A goal is an aim. A goal isn't some static point in time where you achieve something. A goal is simply a tool to identify a problem. It's a point of view. So unfortunately, most people are trying to achieve goals for the sake of acceptance and status and survival, rather than the happiness that stems from resistance being overcome or problems being solved. Now, why is this a problem? Because the goals that compose your mind, identity, and perspective, often in that order, like a set of concentric circles, filter what you perceive. A person with the goal of going to school to get a job will not notice an opportunity to start a business and pursue their life's work. A person with the goal of starting a business won't notice ideas that will help them get good grades. That's because the person going the entrepreneurial route doesn't need good grades for success. It's a completely different set of goals that compose how you view the world. In both cases, those two people, the person in the business and the person at school, can read the same exact book, and they're going to read it completely differently because they're reading it from a different mind. They're going to skip over some paragraphs. They're going to skip over certain sentences, certain lessons, certain insights. The person going to school is going to pull out the information unconsciously that will help them continue going to school. It's going to reinforce the system that is helping you lead to your goals. The same is true with the person that has the identity of building a business. It shapes everything that you perceive. So if you wanted to try and reverse engineer what the goals in your head are, because they are a set of conscious and unconscious goals, often the ones that were programmed into you when you were a child, you can notice them simply by understanding what sticks out to you or what sparks dopamine, what signals dopamine in your brain, because dopamine signals what's important for your survival in the future. So when you feel that hint of excitement, or like you found a novel insight in a book or on social media or whatever it may be, that is an arrow pointing to the goal that your mind is operating on to notice that specific piece of information. Now, this will all start to come together soon, but the point here is that we don't want conformity, we want creativity. Things like goals can either trap us or help us. We know we don't want conformity, but that's just the default state that we find ourselves in. We want that creativity. We want to be different. We want to be unique. We want to create our own lives, not live someone else's. We want new discoveries, not the same results of past generations, because if you look around, most people don't have anything remotely close to the future you want. So in order to understand how to start changing your life, you need to understand that you need a plan, and you need to understand that a plan isn't just this like list of steps. It's a surface area for luck, a surface area for discovery, a frame. Let's get one thing straight. There is an order of operations to achieve anything you want in life within the boundaries of what reality allows. Think of this simple equation. It's 4 plus 6 times open parentheses 5 plus 3 minus 2 close parentheses. The answer to that equation is the goal you're trying to achieve. The equation itself is the problem you're trying to solve. In order to solve that problem and achieve the goal, you need to add, subtract, and multiply in a specific order. If executed in the wrong order, you won't get the right answer. So you can think of complex equations that you did in like math class, advanced math class in high school, or whatever the highest form of math was that you took. You can think of simple equations like 1 plus 1 equals 2. To us, that's like tying our shoes or making food at this point. But for achieving goals in the unknown, for achieving different, more complex things in life, it is a much longer, much more complex equation, and you need to understand how to solve that equation in order to reach the goal or get to the question. But when you're pursuing more difficult goals like making a lot of money or having a thriving relationship or learning how to be more social, when you're pursuing these big life goals that you're trying to achieve in order to create a better life for yourself, the equations aren't that simple. They're very complex. If you think of a math class that you did in high school or in college, the equations get very complex there. But this is life. You don't have the equation. You don't even know the answer. All you have is a guess for what you want the answer to be, and the ability to create an equation or knowledge through experimentation and error correction. That equation is valuable to both yourself and others. It is specific knowledge that can take many forms. Sometimes the equation is a product or service, a book, or advice you give your children to contribute to the progress of humanity. If happiness comes from overcoming resistance and a connection to something greater than yourself, creativity is the vessel for both. This is personally why I write and do this over some other kind of business model or something like that where I could make a lot more money. That's why I'm building something like Cortex, a note-taking app. Everyone wants to build a note-taking app or a to-do app or something of that nature. And it usually fails, but I feel like we can pull it off, and we are pulling it off right now, and it's going pretty well. But that's why I chose to do something like Cortex over some other niche vertical SaaS or agent model that would make so much more and can grow 10 times faster. It's because I enjoy the creative challenge of this. So that's where we start. A goal or a problem. One does not exist without the other. But most people don't know what goal they want to pursue, or their mind is programmed with assigned goals, which makes it incredibly difficult to notice a problem. Partying, sleeping in, and all other bad habits aren't problems unless they prevent you from achieving a goal. Since the goals of the known path are to go to school, get a job, and retire at 65, those don't require much effort or creativity, so you can afford to be a degenerate. When you have your own goals, when you have your own plan, when you have your own vision for the future that is incredibly strong and acts as a frame for how you view life and view situations, you notice problems in people's everyday lifestyle. When you're going to school, getting a job, whatever, that's kind of already decided for you. You know the steps. You know what you need to do. You need to get good grades and you need to make your boss proud. But those things, the 8-hour work days and going to school, you can show up to those things hungover. You can show up to those things and put in minimal effort. It doesn't require much from you. So you allow yourself to do that because the goals aren't that strong. They aren't that demanding of creativity. But when you do your own thing, yeah, it's going to be extremely painful to go out and get drunk and get hungover unless you know how to balance that lifestyle. You're going to wake up and then your entire morning's worth of work is going to suffer, and then you're going to lose progress and you aren't going to hit the weekly goal of, say, getting a newsletter out or getting content out or getting the product out or making a meeting and actually being productive in that meeting. You have to show up for your vision. You don't have to show up for the life you were assigned. So where do we start with all of this? It's like, I want to change my life. I have some kind of idea of what I want in the future. Actually, maybe not. Let's assume that you don't know anything. You don't know what you don't want or what you want. So where we start is just being completely honest with yourself. I've thought this through so much over this video was surprisingly difficult for me to make and think through because I was getting trapped like, okay, how do you know what problem to solve if you don't know what goal you're trying to achieve? How do you just think of a goal that's actually impactful, right? How do you find these things? A lot of people can set goals and uncover problems, but most people, that's where they struggle, is like, I don't have a goal that I want to achieve. I don't have a problem that I want to solve. Then where do you start? That was my entire question. I was trying to think through like extremely hard, is like, just where do you go if you are lost in the middle of nowhere? So this is what I came up with. It may not help many people, but I feel like it'll help a lot of people. The place you start is just being honest with yourself, extremely honest with where you are right now. I want you to ask yourself this question. Are you content with life? The thing about that is that it's a trick question because nobody is. Show me someone who is happy at every second of the day and I'll show you a liar. Life comes in waves, cycles, highs and lows. It's baked into reality. If there were no lows, there would be no creativity and thus no life as we know it today. Humans make sense of the world in stories. We think of the story that we're partaking in. We love watching movies. We love reading books. We love a good story because we can relate to it, because it's the structure of reality in a sense. Nature, it goes through birth and death cycles. You go into a forest, it's not all beautiful, lush greenery. There's dead things everywhere. You rub your arm and you're technically killing thousands of cells. I don't know if that's the exact number, thousands, but you're killing cells. There's birth, there's death, there's highs, there's lows. Happiness, this eternal high that you're trying to chase, doesn't exist. So you are not content with every aspect of your life. In lies the problem. And not just any problem, the starting point of the infinite string of problems that you're going to solve in order to reach your vision. You can look at your life right now, realize where you aren't content with a specific thing, and you can start with that problem. Start there. But now things start to get scary. The unknown creeps nearer. You're knee deep in the water and want to sprint back to shore. The thought of that problem starts to multiply because your mind has lost all constraints and boundaries. This specifically is known as psychic entropy or disorder in the mind. You finally identify the problem, that you're not content with a certain aspect of your life. But then that thought starts to splinter. You look in the mirror and you're like, I'm a bit overweight and I don't really like that. And then you start thinking about how you don't want to take off your shirt when you're out at the pool, or what your friends will think, or what your girlfriend or wife or husband or boyfriend will think about your weight and how that will impact your relationship. And then you start to think of all the difficult things that you have to do in order to cut down weight and all the foods that you don't want to give up in order to exchange them for the healthy foods that will help you lose weight. You think of all this exercise that you have to do. And you think about, well, what happens if I stay this way? If I continue gaining weight, then the heart disease, the chronic disease, all of these other things start to flood your mind. And if you don't have a structure to order your mind, how to start, you don't have the plan, and then what we're going to talk about with breaking it down It's very difficult to deal with that uncertainty, and that's why most people shy away and quit. So in between the problem, which you have now, and the goal, which is the polar end, a problem implies a goal. When you realize a problem, you now have a goal. Make it conscious. In between those two things is the opportunity for a plan, a strategy, a hierarchy of goals that allows you to get into this flow state and make cumulative progress that helps keep the chaos at bay as you trek into the unknown or into your own different and unique life. So the question finally is, how do you create a plan? How do you stop the walls from closing in? This is going to be a painful process, navigating into the unknown, breaking free of everything that you thought you knew, because you aren't just creating a new life, you're creating a new identity. You're expanding your mind to house more complexity that allows you to solve more valuable problems. And if problems are half the source of happiness, right? Happiness, let's say enjoyment. Enjoyment is the feeling of resistance being overcome and a connection greater than something yourself, a connection to something greater than yourself. So by solving problems, that's where enjoyment lies, because you're overcoming resistance, you're entering the flow state. And by solving problems, you have knowledge that you can pass down in the form of a product, service. I'm not saying an info product or service. I'm saying that any product or service, this water bottle is a deposit of knowledge. By passing that thing on and contributing to the cumulative progress of humanity, you find purpose. And that's what solves the other end of the happiness or enjoyment equation. Now, it's not as simple as setting a goal or creating a New Year's resolution, because you aren't the person who would achieve those goals. You don't have the identity that would achieve those goals. Bodybuilders don't have a problem eating, training, and recovering. Their entire life revolves around their goals. Every decision is a vote toward their future. Writers don't have a problem generating ideas or publishing their work. And on the complete other end, gamers don't have a problem staring at a screen for 8 hours at a time, for better or worse. Of course, if you're a professional gamer and that's what you do for a living, awesome. You don't have a problem doing that. It's not hard being disciplined. And that's the thing. It's not that you aren't disciplined. You have no problem eating, partying, going to bed late, and eating brain-fogging Totino's pizza rolls as a midday snack, because it doesn't clash with the goals of your identity. You're already disciplined in every single thing that you do. But a bodybuilder, on the other hand, would be in deep chaos if they didn't have access to the food that was a requirement for their vision. Discipline is a feature of identity. When you are trying to become a new person, who you are is fighting who you want to become. And that's painful. You will go through a period of growing pains until your new identity solidifies. So we need to take this process gradually. The first thing we do is to create our own little world, a frame, a perspective, a little mental boundary to operate within. This is what I've noticed in some of the most successful people that I know, is that they live in their own little world. They're walking down the street. They're not paying attention to other people. They're in their own head. They're in their own world. They aren't living in other people's heads. They aren't wondering what people think of them. They're not wondering this, that, and the other. They're focused. They've programmed their own video game. It's addictive. It's enjoyable. It provides a logical sequence of steps that results in experience. It helps them understand what's worth paying attention to and what's worth learning. It is a frame for their mind that repels distractions and constrains entropy. You start building your world by setting the foundations of your new identity. So we need to cover all bases. We need to create a full circle that will act as a frame of reference. We need a lens to view life from, to notice new opportunities, make better decisions, and sense when we are off track so that we can course correct in a better direction. Now, don't expect this all to happen at once, because it took you decades to become the person you are today. It's going to take some time to become a new person. I wouldn't say a few decades, but I'd say it will take effort, it will take pain, it will take struggle in order to change who you are. It will take, I'd say, at least 12 months to expand into this new mold that you are providing your mind. Write these down on a piece of paper. First, your anti-vision, your picture for the life you despise. Second, your vision, your picture for your ideal future. 3 is constraints, what you aren't willing to sacrifice to reach your vision. 4 is a 10-year goal, so where you want to be in 10 years. And then 5 is a 1-year goal where you want to be in 1 year. Now, if you want a worksheet for this, there's a link in the description, or you can join my newsletter and I send it as the welcome email. You just click it, you duplicate it, you start filling it out. We've talked about this many times before, so I'm not going to go into the details of those things. Now with this may sound like your typical self-help or productivity goal setting advice, but it's really not, because you have to remember that a goal is an aim or desired outcome. That's it. Goals can and should evolve when exposed to better information. A goal is not a static point in the future that must be achieved at all costs. A goal is a tool for identifying a problem. A problem requires a solution. The solution must be arrived at creatively through making guesses and correcting errors. Goals are points of view that must be refined on a consistent basis. So with this, you are creating an outline for the story that you plan to write. When you write a story, when you're creating a new life, you don't just sit down and start writing. You can if you have the ideas, and that's great. You should. If you have the ideas to start writing that page, then do it and you make progress faster. But most people don't have the ideas top of mind. They need the outline. They need the structure to creatively navigate between. Those are what constraints are. Constraints breed creativity. If it's just absolute freedom and you have the freedom to do whatever you want, you're going to stare at a blank page. You're not going to act. You're not going to start pursuing a goal. But when you're writing and you have a topic and you have a goal for the writing and you have a story and you have these little quotes to include and you have this framework, this boundary, that's what breeds creativity. Another way to think about constraints or the sacrifices that you're not willing to make in order to reach your goals is like, okay, I want to build this business, but I don't want to sacrifice family time. The person who just wants to build the business isn't going to have to do it creatively like the other person will in order to not sacrifice family time. They're going to have to pay a lot more attention to how they structure their days, how they take meetings, when they stop working, all of these other things. Now, the thing with this as well is that if you understand writing or how you write a story, when you create the outline, that kind of acts as a magnet for ideas or a frame from which you view life, where whenever I write a newsletter or a video script or a book, whatever it may be, in Cortex, this is why we have Cortex Capture, is because when I'm on a walk or when I'm having conversations or when I'm just thinking, all of my ideas magnetize towards that thing. That's how you notice ideas in reality, is by having a project to apply those ideas to. If you don't have the project or the goal, so many ideas and opportunities are passing you by because your mind doesn't care about those things. It's not signaling. There's no dopamine signaling for the survival of that project. Now, the thing with life is that it's not just like a book. It's not a book that comes to an end. It's an infinite story that you continue writing until your demise. So remember that, is that you don't just achieve a goal and stop because the story hasn't ended yet. That's simply just a chapter in the story. You have to write a new chapter. These goals aren't final peaks on the mountain, because once you reach that mountain peak, you see finally that there's another one, but you can only see the other one once you reach the first one. So how do we start making progress toward these goals? The 1-year goal, 10-year goal, vision, anti-vision, etc. It's with projects. So that's what we need to do, is invest energy into a series of projects. I say that specifically because you aren't interested in a project until you invest energy into it. The other thing is that you don't learn skills, you build projects. Skills, like degrees, are practically useless in isolation. A series of projects is how you move toward the life you want. If you want to receive, you must give, and keeping your knowledge in your head is a surefire way to become bitter about how smart you are and how little people care. A project is a quest in your game. The more you build, the more experience you put into your traits, profession, character, and abilities. When you build a project, you learn relevant techniques that allow you to solve a problem and achieve a specific result. Now, we're not going to go over how to structure a project here with things like milestones and levers and tasks and deadlines, because you understand what a project is. It's something that you create. It's something that you build. It's something that allows you to pursue an interest-based education, because you need to learn in order to build the project. But the thing here is that your project must be a stepping stone toward your vision. It must solve the problem that we initially came up with how you aren't content with your life. That's a project. If it's your body, then the project is going to the gym. Your project is your body. So as a quick example, if you struggle with money, that's a problem. From there, you fabricate a project to build in alignment with the example vision of having a successful business with the constraint of working 4 hours a day so you have the time for your family or relationships. That drastically narrows what kind of project you will build. But the thing here is, if you aren't in the right environment, then you won't notice this as an option, right? You struggle with money, but you're not in the right environment. You don't have the right beliefs. The opportunities aren't in that environment. Then you're not going to notice something like starting a one-person business as an opportunity. You're going to have the beliefs of, oh, businesses require you to build a local business like brick and mortar, or you need this much startup capital to build a software, or business is only for these people who have all of these skills and leadership experience, when that's not the case at all. If you were up to date with where the tech industry and business industry is, you would understand that freelance work is a thing, creator work is a thing. Anyone can post on social media and get that post spread to potential customers. This is why I talk about the one-person business as a great starting point for other people. It's because it removes most of the limiting beliefs they have and gets them to just start learning skills, building projects that they can evolve into something else. So from there, you create a project like starting a newsletter. You don't get trapped in tutorial hell learning about newsletters. You search for techniques like how to choose a topic and write a headline, and then you continue stacking techniques like how to structure